Jakarta, January 6, 2016. A reunion. A coffee. A sudden collapse. One of them never left the cafe alive. The late afternoon sun draped itself lazily over the Jakarta skyline, casting long shadows across the city's polished facades and bustling avenues. Inside the Grand Indonesia shopping center, nestled among luxury boutiques and ambient lounges, was Olivier Café, a sophisticated French-inspired space that catered to the city's affluent class. Its marble floors gleamed, and its hanging Edison bulbs cast a warm, golden hue over polished wooden tables. At 5:15 p.m., two women walked through the ornate entrance of the cafe. Ayla Ramadhani, elegant in a cream-colored blouse and beige slacks, and Tari Wijaya, in a patterned batik dress. They paused, their eyes scanning the room until they spotted her, Nadya Prasetya, already seated at a corner table, her back slightly turned, facing a wall adorned with muted gold accents. She rose slowly, offering a tight-lipped smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. The reunion was 4 years overdue. The three women had once been inseparable, bonded by their shared years as Indonesian international students in Sydney. Time, however, had driven a wedge between them. Life moved on, paths diverged, friendships strained under the weight of distance and unspoken tension. Yet here they were, summoned by Nadya herself, who had insisted on the meeting. Their table, number 54, was oddly tucked away, slightly hidden from the central dining area, shielded partially by indoor plants and angled from the main security camera. On the table were 3 drinks, already served and sweating with condensation. 2 cocktails and a tall glass of Vietnamese iced coffee, glistening brown under the light. "I ordered for everyone," Nadya said with a nonchalant shrug as they sat down. "Hope that's okay." Ayla hesitated, her eyes flicking to the glass of coffee. "I actually planned to order myself." Nadya smiled, gesturing toward the cup. "Come on. I remembered you liked Vietnamese coffee. Consider it a gift." Ayla gave a polite smile, not wanting to offend. The atmosphere at the table was cordial but restrained. Tari sensed the undercurrent, an emotional fog that neither laughter nor pleasantries could cut through. They began to chat about work, Jakarta's traffic, and the inevitable memories of Sydney. Nadya was quieter than usual, occasionally tapping her fingers against her thigh. 3 shopping bags sat beside her chair, neatly placed, one from a cosmetics store, another from a clothing brand, and one more holding small gifts. Nadya had said she bought soap for her friends. The bags were positioned just right to obscure the view of the drinks from nearby angles. Then, almost imperceptibly, it happened. Ayla reached for the iced coffee. She lifted the glass, gave it a light stir with the straw, and took a sip. Just one. Seconds passed. Then her brow furrowed. She waved her hand in front of her face. "This tastes awful. Like chemicals or something." Tari leaned in. "Do you want me to call the waiter?" But Ayla couldn't respond. Her eyes widened. Her body jerked backward violently as if pulled by invisible strings. The glass dropped from her hand, clattering against the table. Her limbs convulsed, her head tilted sharply, and from the corners of her mouth, foam began to spill, white, frothy, and horrifying. Screams erupted from nearby tables. Glassware shattered. A waiter dropped a tray. Tari jumped from her seat. "Ayla! Ayla!" She reached for her friend, shaking her, trying to hold her up, but Ayla's body was stiff and unresponsive. Her mouth foamed, her eyes rolled back. She was choking on nothing. The seizure, some thought. The stroke, perhaps. But it was too sudden, too violent. The staff rushed over. A young manager barked orders. "Call an ambulance. Bring oxygen." People crowded around, some filming, others frozen in shock. And then there was Nadya. She stood back, her chair pushed neatly in, arms crossed. She looked around, calm, detached, as if she were observing a scene on a screen. Her gaze scanned the chaos. She didn't kneel. She didn't touch Ayla. She didn't speak to Tari. Until suddenly she did. Turning to the cafe manager, she asked coldly, "What did you put in the coffee?" The words sliced through the air like a blade. The manager recoiled. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Nadya said, her tone sharp but flat. You served that to my friend and now she's, what? Poisoned? It was a strange thing to say. No one had yet mentioned poisoning. No one had even processed what had happened. But Nadya had. Or perhaps she knew, long before Ayla took the sip. The manager, shaken by the accusation, turned to her staff. Seal the cup. Don't touch anything. Bring me a bag. We're handing this over to the police. Tari knelt beside Ayla, sobbing and trying to keep her awake, but Ayla was limp. Her skin had gone pale. Her pulse was faint. She was barely breathing when the paramedics arrived. The cafe floor cleared. Chairs were overturned. The iced coffee glass remained on the table, untouched, yet central to everything. By 6:30 p.m., at the hospital, Ayla Ramadhani was pronounced dead. She had been married for 2 months. Just hours before, her husband Reza Mahendra had kissed her goodbye, telling her to enjoy her catch-up with friends. They had dinner plans for the evening. They were discussing their honeymoon. Instead, he was now identifying her body. The shockwave traveled fast. A beautiful, healthy 27-year-old woman dies after one sip of coffee, in public, in a luxury cafe, in the capital city's beating heart. And one friend, the one who ordered the drink, sat cold and unreadable. No tears. No screams. Only questions. And a subtle smile that some swore they saw as she stepped away from the chaos. Indonesia was about to witness a murder case unlike any in recent memory. Before the tragedy at Olivier Café, before the cameras, the courtroom, and the endless speculation, there was just Nadya and Ayla. 2 young women from Jakarta's elite families, both raised in opulence, both seemingly destined for smooth lives paved with success and admiration. They first met in Sydney, Australia, in the autumn of 2008, on the bustling campus of a design school in North Sydney. The setting was a world away from Jakarta's heat and noise, clean air, orderly streets, and the subdued charm of a foreign metropolis. It was the perfect environment for reinvention, and both women took to it in their own way. Ayla Ramadhani had always been soft-spoken, almost reserved to a fault. Behind her composed exterior was a deeply introspective soul. She came from a loving, close-knit family, the kind where dinner was sacred, hugs were frequent, and secrets were rare. Her twin sister, Dina, had stayed behind in Jakarta to help with the family business, while Ayla pursued her passion for visual design abroad. Nadya Prasetya, by contrast, entered every room like she was born to own it. Confident, sharp-witted, and often the loudest laugh in any gathering, Nadya thrived on attention. While Ayla dressed in muted tones and spoke in thoughtful phrases, Nadya wore bold colors and threw out jokes like confetti. She was undeniably magnetic until she wasn't. They became fast friends, 2 Indonesians navigating the same foreign city, facing the same homesickness, laughing over cheap takeout and late-night assignment stress. They studied together, traveled together, partied together. With time, they grew into a chosen family away from home. Alongside a few other fellow Indonesians, including Tari Wijaya, they formed a close-knit group that felt like a refuge in a city of strangers. But time has a way of revealing cracks beneath the surface. For all her outward charm, Nadya had an edge, a volatility Ayla sometimes struggled to understand. She would go from euphoria to sulking in the span of a single evening. She grew possessive of her friendships, easily hurt when she felt excluded. And most of all, Nadya seemed drawn to chaos, especially when it came to men. That's where Andro Santoso entered the picture. Tall, tattooed, and intensely private, Andro was a mysterious figure who caught Nadya's attention in their second year in Sydney. Their relationship, from the start, was anything but stable. Friends recalled heated arguments, broken phones, unexplained bruises, and teary nights. Nadya insisted it was passion. Others saw it for what it was, toxic and dangerous. Ayla tried, gently at first, to express concern. "He doesn't treat you well," she had once said. "You deserve better." But Nadya waved her off. "You don't get it. He understands me." By the time they reached their final year, Nadya had become more isolated. She showed up to fewer gatherings, missed group projects, and once, when pressed, confessed to Ayla that she'd been hospitalized for self-harm. Ayla tried to support her. She always did. But there were moments that chilled her, when Nadia's darkness seemed bottomless. After graduation, life pulled them in different directions. Ayla returned to Jakarta, where she began working with her father's creative agency. There, she met Reza Mahendra, a soft-spoken, ambitious young entrepreneur who would become her fiancé. She seemed to blossom, happier, healthier, and more peaceful than she'd ever been in Sydney. Her days were filled with work, family dinners, and long phone calls with Dina. Her nights with Reza. Nadya stayed in Australia, moving in with Andro. But what looked like commitment was, in truth, a descent. Neighbors would later testify to police visits, loud fights, and ambulances arriving at their home. Nadia's mental state deteriorated. She lost her job at a creative agency after threatening a supervisor. She sent dozens of erratic emails, some violent in tone. Her relationship with Andro finally collapsed in late 2015, after he filed a restraining order against her, citing emotional instability and harassment. But before all that, before the legal battles and the collapse, there was one final conversation between Ayla and Nadya. It happened in June 2015, when Ayla traveled to Sydney for a holiday with friends. By then she was engaged to Reza, glowing with pre-wedding excitement. She reached out to Nadya, out of nostalgia, perhaps, or guilt. They agreed to meet for dinner. It was awkward from the start. Nadya arrived late, distracted, her face tired. They made small talk, but Ayla could sense the difference. Her old friend was gone, replaced by someone brittle and cynical. Nadya spoke bitterly about Andro, about her job, about how nobody really understood her. And then Ayla said something she would later regret. "You need to leave him," she said. "You need to choose yourself for once." There was silence. Nadya didn't speak. She didn't nod or argue. She simply stood up, left money on the table, and walked out. She didn't say goodbye. Later that night, Ayla told Reza what happened. "She's not the same person anymore," she said. "I don't think we should see each other again. Something about her feels dangerous." She had no idea just how right she was. That dinner in Sydney was the turning point. From that moment, Nadya cut off most of her mutual friends with Ayla. She grew more erratic, more isolated. And though Ayla returned to Jakarta and carried on with her wedding preparations, Nadya was watching from afar, angry, alone, unraveling. In November 2015, Ayla and Reza married in a dream ceremony in Bali. The event was filled with laughter, tears of joy, and glowing wishes from family and friends. Nadya was not invited. And she noticed. She saw the photos, read the posts, watched the videos. Everyone Ayla once knew was there, everyone except her. In that moment, something shifted permanently in Nadia's mind. It wasn't just a wedding she missed. It was the final confirmation. Ayla had moved on. And Nadya had been left behind. Jakarta in December burns with a kind of frantic energy. Malls spill over with Christmas shoppers, the traffic snarls louder than usual, and the air is heavy with humidity and anticipation. It was under this churning sky that Nadya Prasetya returned, carrying nothing visible, yet everything within. It had been nearly 6 months since the uncomfortable dinner in Sydney. 6 months since Ayla Ramadhani had last seen Nadia's face. But Ayla hadn't expected to see it again. Not in person. And certainly not under the pretense of reconciliation. The official story Nadya told friends was simple. "I just need a fresh start." She had packed her things and left Sydney behind, her damaged reputation, her legal problems, and most of all, the crumbling ruins of her relationship with Andro Santoso. She didn't tell many people that Andro had filed a restraining order, that she had been let go from her job after allegedly threatening a supervisor, that she had spent several nights in the ER due to panic attacks and self-harm. What Nadya told the world was optimism. What she carried inside was something else entirely. The truth was, Nadya had been unraveling for some time. In August 2015, she had crashed her Audi A3 into the wall of a nursing home at 2 a.m. Witnesses described the car hurtling into the brick structure just meters from sleeping residents. Miraculously, no one was hurt, but it was a miracle born of pure luck, not intention. When the police arrived, Nadya reeked of alcohol and confusion. When she was asked what had happened, she replied, "I wanted to feel something." That night wasn't a one-off. In the months leading up to her return, emergency services had been called to her apartment 5 times, each time for self-harm, suicide ideation, or public disturbance. Andrew, exhausted and frightened, finally severed all contact. He changed his number. He moved out. Then he went to the police and begged them. She needs help. But she's not listening to anyone. In her final month in Sydney, Nadya was unemployed, emotionally volatile, and socially isolated. She sent hundreds of texts to Andrew, his friends, and even former co-workers. Some were incoherent. Others were graphic threats. One message read, "If you think you can erase me, I'll erase both of us. I know how to disappear. I know how to make someone disappear." Another, sent just days before she flew back to Jakarta. "She has everything. I have nothing. But I remember everything." She landed in Jakarta in early December, alone. No one met her at the airport. Her family, once pillars of her privilege, kept a cautious distance. Even they knew something in her had shifted. Something they didn't recognize. Still, Nadya didn't waste time. She reinstalled WhatsApp, created a group chat titled, "Catch Up Coffee Hot Beverage." The members, Tari Wijaya and Ayla Ramadhani. Tari replied within minutes, warm as always. Ayla didn't respond for 3 days. When she finally did, her message was polite, cautious. "Hi Nadya. Long time. Sure, maybe we can meet, but only if Tari can join." The implication was clear. Ayla wouldn't meet Nadya alone. Nadya pretended not to notice. "Of course. The more the merrier." Smiling face, smiling eyes. "I'll treat you both. Let's make it special. I'll take care of the reservation. Let me know what drinks you like." Tari said she was open to anything. Ayla, almost as an afterthought, mentioned, "Vietnamese iced coffee sounds nice, but I'll order mine at the table." To that, Nadya responded quickly, "No worries. I'll get it in advance. It'll be waiting when you arrive." Relieved face. 3 days before the meeting, Nadya was spotted at Grand Indonesia shopping center. Surveillance footage would later show her entering multiple stores, one for body products, another for stationery, and a final stop at a department store. She carried 3 small shopping bags when she left. She had bought gifts, she would later say. "Just some soap for my old friends." But what mattered most wasn't what she bought. It was what she was searching for in the café upstairs. Olivier Café was her next destination. Dressed in dark jeans and a soft gray blouse, Nadya entered just before 4 p.m. on January 6th. Her reservation was for 5 o'clock, but she arrived over 90 minutes early. A waiter later remembered how she walked slowly, almost like she was inspecting the place. She paced. She looked up at the ceiling around the room. She even asked about the nicest corner table with privacy. Eventually, she selected table 54, nestled near a decorative wall, away from the kitchen, and most importantly, not directly visible from the café's central camera. The table did, however, have partial coverage from a side camera, but Nadya had a solution for that too. At 4:15 p.m., she left the café and returned 10 minutes later with the 3 shopping bags. She placed them on the table, but not randomly. She arranged them in a way that subtly blocked the sight line between the camera and the drinks. Then she approached the bar and ordered 3 beverages, paying in advance. 2 cocktails. 1 Vietnamese iced coffee. She returned to the table and placed the drinks behind the shopping bags. She then sat down. Still alone. Waiting. Footage showed her adjusting the table slightly. Moving things. Repositioning herself. And then, for a few seconds, her hands moved quickly over the iced coffee. The camera resolution wasn't sharp enough to show what, if anything, she added to the drink. But the gesture was unmistakable. She then placed the cup perfectly in front of the seat Ayla would later occupy. By the time Tari and Ayla arrived at 5:15 p.m., the drinks had been sitting untouched on the table for over 45 minutes. The ice had slightly melted, but the condensation had settled nicely on the surface, just cool enough to still appear fresh. Nadya stood to greet them. Her smile was tight. Her tone was light. Her plan, already in motion. The cafe was beginning to fill. At 5 p.m. sharp, Olivier Café had transitioned into its golden hour. Light jazz played in the background. Couples murmured over desserts. Businessmen clacked away on laptops. It was the kind of place designed to make people feel important. But Nadya Prasetya wasn't here to feel important. She was here for something precise. She sat at table 54, positioned in the corner of the café's main room. It was the most discreet spot, sheltered on one side by a decorative concrete wall and half hidden from the café's main surveillance camera. At first glance, it looked like any other table. But it had one key advantage. With the right placement, the camera's view could be completely obstructed. And that's what Nadya had done. She had returned from her shopping round at precisely 4:15 p.m., 1 hour before the others would arrive, with 3 boutique shopping bags, one from the body shop, one from a cosmetics store, and one unmarked. Each bag had been intentionally chosen for its height and width, allowing her to line them up on the table just so. She adjusted the seating, shifting one chair slightly to the left, ensuring that the 3 drinks, already on the table, sat perfectly behind the wall of paper bags. She had ordered the drinks minutes earlier: a mojito, a lychee martini, and a Vietnamese iced coffee, the kind Ayla Ramadhani had casually mentioned in the WhatsApp chat. The coffee, tall and dark, came served in a glass with a wide straw. No lid, no seal. The kind of drink that welcomed additives, intended or not. Nadya paid in cash, thanked the waiter with a polite smile, and returned to her table alone. For several minutes, she sat completely still. Then, without warning, her hand moved. It was quick, almost practiced. She reached into her bag, fingers fumbling with something small and unseen. Her body shielded the movement from other patrons. The paper bags shielded her from the camera. Footage later recovered would show only this: her wrist moving in a subtle, deliberate arc over the iced coffee glass. The straw stirred once, then twice. And then she sat back. No fanfare. No emotion. Just stillness. By 5:10 p.m., Nadya checked her phone. A message from Tari Wijaya. "We're downstairs, parking. Be up in 5. She smiled. Everything was ready. At 5:15 p.m., Ayla and Tari arrived, laughing about something trivial, unaware that their evening had already been decided. Ayla, ever composed, wore a pale lavender blouse and pearl earrings. Her hair was neatly tied back, and her expression was warm but slightly guarded. Tari was more animated, bright red lipstick, bold earrings, and her usual bubbly energy. She greeted Nadya with enthusiasm. Nadya rose to meet them. "Look at you both," she said, smiling. "Like we never left Sydney." Ayla's smile was smaller, controlled. They sat. Nadya gestured to the drinks. "I already ordered. Your coffee, Ayla." "I remembered." Ayla blinked. "Oh, thank you. I was going to." "It's already here." "No need," Nadya said quickly, placing the tall glass directly in front of Ayla. There was a pause. Just a second. But Ayla, not wanting to appear rude, reached for the coffee. She lifted it to her lips. The straw touched her mouth. She sipped. Only once. Nothing happened at first. The conversation resumed, tentative and surface level. Ayla asked about Nadia's return. Tari complimented her outfit. Nadya gave vague answers, vague smiles. But Ayla was fidgeting. She shifted in her chair. Her fingers tapped against the table. Her breathing changed, sharper, more shallow. And then came the words. "This coffee tastes weird." Tari leaned in. "What do you mean?" Ayla didn't answer. She closed her eyes. Her hand trembled. Then she gasped, loud and sharp, her head snapping back, body jerking forward. The glass hit the table and fell. It happened fast. And yet, to those watching, time seemed to stretch unnaturally. Ayla convulsed. Foam began to rise from the corners of her lips. Her legs thrashed under the table. Her body tilted sideways, knocking her chair back. Tari screamed, "Ayla!" She lunged forward, trying to hold her friend upright, but Ayla's limbs were stiff. Her eyes rolled back. Her mouth opened in a silent cry. Her chest rose and fell erratically. Waiters rushed toward the scene. Glasses clinked. Someone shouted, "Call an ambulance." Customers backed away, startled and confused. The café's manager ran to the table, pulling out his phone to contact emergency services. Amid the chaos, only Nadya remained seated, unmoved, unbothered. Then she spoke. Not to Ayla. Not to Tari. To the café manager. "What did you put in her drink?" The manager froze. "Excuse me?" Nadya repeated herself, louder this time. "Did one of your staff do something to her coffee?" Her voice was calm. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap. The manager, flustered, glanced at the glass on the table, now lying on its side, some liquid pooled beside it. He made a snap decision. Get a plastic evidence bag. Seal that glass. Don't throw it away. It was that decision, made in confusion, perhaps even guilt, that would later change everything. The paramedics arrived at 5:27 p.m. Ayla had stopped convulsing. She was unresponsive, her skin pale and lips bluish. She was rushed to the nearest hospital while Tari accompanied her, sobbing and in shock. Nadya remained behind. She didn't ask to ride with Ayla. She didn't ask where the hospital was. Instead, she requested her check, paid the bill, and left without another word. Later that evening, in the emergency ward of Jakarta General Hospital, Ayla Ramadhani was pronounced dead. Time of death, 6:30 p.m. The cause, suspected poisoning. The suspicion, murder. The evidence? A single glass of iced coffee, ordered early, placed with precision, and consumed without suspicion. The moment the glass hit the table, time fractured. Ayla Ramadhani's body recoiled violently, her spine arching backward, her head snapping toward the ceiling. Her mouth opened in a distorted gasp, foam beginning to pour from the corners like a cracked dam. Her hands trembled. Her legs kicked under the table. It was as if her body no longer belonged to her. Tari Wijaya screamed first. "Ayla! Ayla!" She leapt to her friend's side, knocking her own chair over in the process. Patrons nearby turned, startled by the noise, some standing, others frozen mid-bite, forks halfway to their mouths. Ayla's face was twisted in agony. Her lips had begun to pale, the skin beneath her eyes turning grayish. Her fingers clawed at the air, unable to grip anything real. She made a soft, choking sound, like someone gasping through thick liquid. Tari knelt beside her, grabbing her shoulders. "Say something. Ayla, what's happening?" But Ayla couldn't speak. Her limbs were spasming, her body struggling for air. White foam covered her mouth, staining her blouse. Her eyes were rolling back, showing only slivers of the brown irises that once lit up every room she entered. The manager rushed to the scene, flanked by two staff. "What's going on?" "She's having a seizure," a waiter cried. "Get the oxygen tank, now. Call an ambulance." Tari's voice cracked with panic. She just drank her coffee, and then, this. She turned to Nadya. Nadya, she was fine a second ago. "Say something." Nadya, who had been seated silently all this time, finally stood up. But her face didn't show fear. It didn't show grief. It didn't even show surprise. Her expression was neutral. Maybe even analytical. Then she spoke, slowly, carefully. "Did you check the coffee? Could someone from your staff have put something in it?" The cafe manager blinked. "What?" Nadya continued, calm as ever. "My friend's dying. Don't you think you should test your drinks?" It was an accusation wrapped in concern. A subtle but sharp shift in narrative. And it worked. The manager, stunned and unsure, looked at the half-spilled glass of Vietnamese iced coffee. The straw still poked out. Foam clung to the rim. Liquid had pooled beneath it. He turned to a waiter. "Don't throw anything away. Get a clean bag. Seal that cup. Call the police." By the time the ambulance arrived, Ayla had gone limp. Her convulsions had stopped, replaced by eerie stillness. Her chest rose once, twice, then stalled. The paramedics moved quickly, lifting her onto a stretcher, oxygen mask strapped to her face. Tari held her hand the entire time, whispering her name like a prayer. "Nadya, come with us," she pleaded. But Nadya didn't move. She simply watched them go. When asked by staff if she was a relative, Nadya declined. "She's just a friend," she said. Then she paid the bill. In full. With cash. She left a small tip. At 6:30 p.m., in the emergency wing of Jakarta General Hospital, Ayla Ramadhani was pronounced dead. The doctors tried everything. IVs. Epinephrine. Defibrillation. But it was too late. The substance had worked fast, shockingly fast. Reza Mahendra, her husband of 2 months, arrived shortly after, still in office attire. When he saw her body, cold and unmoving, he collapsed to the floor. Tari sobbed beside him. She just took a sip, just one sip. None of it made sense. How could a healthy, vibrant 27-year-old woman die in minutes from a single drink? What was in that coffee? The café's sealed glass was turned over to police that night. Initial forensic testing confirmed the presence of a highly concentrated dose of potassium cyanide, a lethal poison with a bitter, metallic taste often described as similar to almonds. In even small doses, it could cause rapid respiratory failure, seizures, and death. Ayla had taken only one sip. And that was all it took. 3 days later, on January 9th, a limited autopsy was performed with the reluctant consent of Ayla's family, who, as practicing Muslims, were initially opposed to invasive procedures. The medical team agreed to be as respectful as possible, extracting only what was necessary. The results confirmed cyanide in Ayla's stomach contents. However, no significant trace of the poison was found in her liver, kidneys, or bloodstream, possibly due to the rapid fatal onset and lack of circulation before absorption could fully spread. If not for the sealed coffee cup, investigators may have never known what killed her. Meanwhile, Nadya kept her distance. She didn't attend the funeral. She didn't send condolences. She told a mutual friend, "I already said goodbye to that friendship a long time ago." But others began to talk. Whispers turned into suspicions. Old classmates exchanged messages. Tari gave a full statement to the police. Café footage was retrieved, showing Nadya arriving early, choosing the corner table, blocking the camera's view with shopping bags, and being alone with the drinks for over an hour. And the biggest question no one could answer: why had she insisted on ordering Ayla's favorite drink in advance? Especially when Ayla had specifically said she'd order it herself. The pieces were falling into place. And the police were watching. 6 months after the death of Ayla Ramadhani, the Indonesian media landscape shifted into overdrive. What began as whispered suspicion had exploded into national obsession. On television, on the radio, across social media feeds, the name Nadya Prasetya was everywhere. The narrative was too irresistible. 2 beautiful, wealthy women. A sudden death in a high-end café. A murder weapon served with ice. And above all, a suspect who didn't seem remotely sorry. On June 15, 2016, the courtroom at Central Jakarta District Court was packed. Reporters swarmed the entrance. Photographers lined the hallways. Seats filled with journalists, lawyers, students, housewives. No one wanted to miss the trial of the century. When Nadya Prasetya arrived, escorted by security, a ripple moved through the crowd. She wasn't handcuffed. She wasn't crying. She was smiling. Wearing a neatly pressed white blouse and tailored pants, her hair combed back in a soft wave, Nadya looked more like a television host than a murder defendant. She waved to the cameras. She offered a casual nod to the press. A reporter captured her whispering to her lawyer before entering the courtroom. "Do I look too serious? Maybe I should smile more." That smile, cool, polite, eerily serene, would come to define the trial. The prosecution laid out their case with surgical precision. They had CCTV footage showing Nadya arriving 90 minutes early to the café, selecting table 54, placing shopping bags strategically, and being alone with the drinks. They had witness testimony from waiters who confirmed she had ordered all beverages in advance. They had forensic reports showing cyanide in Ayla's stomach and in the coffee cup. They didn't have a confession. They didn't find cyanide in Nadya's apartment. But they had a trail of behavior, clear, deliberate, damning. And then there was her demeanor. Every day in court, Nadya behaved the same. She arrived early. She sat upright. She made eye contact with the judge. She smiled at journalists during recess. She even corrected reporters on her favorite brand of coffee during a whispered aside. She never cried. She never broke. While Tari Wijaya sobbed on the witness stand describing Ayla's final moments, Nadya folded her hands and nodded, as if taking mental notes. When Reza Mahendra testified, his voice breaking as he spoke of losing his wife just 2 months after their wedding, Nadya looked at him only once. Briefly. Expressionless. The court, and the country, was riveted. How could someone so composed be so cruel? Her defense team was formidable. Her wealthy family had hired over 15 top-tier lawyers, including former prosecutors and legal scholars. They argued that no one saw Nadya add anything to the drink, that cyanide wasn't found in Ayla's liver, kidneys, or blood, only in the stomach, that no full autopsy had been performed due to religious objections, that Ayla may have died from an undiagnosed medical condition or even a rare chemical imbalance. They even suggested the cyanide may have been produced naturally post-mortem, though toxicologists roundly rejected this theory. One lawyer, in a particularly bold moment, declared, "This trial is not about science. It's about public emotion. And my client is not here to satisfy a thirst for spectacle." But that was exactly what it had become. Every major news outlet aired daily updates. Talk shows dissected Nadia's expressions, her clothing, her body language. Psychologists were invited on air to speculate about her mental state. Some said she was a sociopath. Others said she was simply highly intelligent and misunderstood. But the public wasn't confused. Online polls showed that 82% of Indonesians believed she was guilty. The comment sections were brutal. "She's evil. That smile haunts me. If she walks free, there's no justice." The trial stretched on for months. Behind the scenes, investigators had reached out to Australian authorities, where Nadya had lived for nearly a decade. After tense diplomatic negotiations, Australia handed over her police records, with one strict condition: Nadya would not face the death penalty. What the Indonesian authorities received was chilling. 13 separate reports involving threats of violence. One incident where Nadya had threatened to kill her manager and his mother. Psychiatric evaluations noting borderline personality traits, suicidal ideation, and obsessive behavior. A restraining order filed by Andro Santoso, detailing thousands of threatening messages Nadya had sent after their breakup. She had written, "If I can't have peace, no one around me will either." But still, Nadya didn't flinch. Even when confronted with these records in court, she responded evenly. "I was in pain. I needed help. But that doesn't mean I killed my friend." When asked if she had any remorse, she replied, "For what happened to Ayla? Of course. For being blamed for it? Absolutely not." On October 5, 2016, the courtroom was electric. Journalists scribbled notes. Cameras flashed. The judge cleared his throat. In a firm, unwavering voice, he delivered the verdict. Nadya Prasetya is found guilty of premeditated murder. The sentence, 20 years in prison. The courtroom erupted. Tari burst into tears. Reza sat silently, then bowed his head. Even members of the press exhaled in visible relief. And Nadya? She stood, and whispered to her attorney, "At least they'll never forget me." Justice, for many, had been served. But something deeper lingered. That smile. That unblinking calm. That final, haunting image burned into the eyes of millions. Nadya was going to prison. But the story was far from over. In the weeks following the verdict, the nation of Indonesia exhaled. The trial was over. The cameras stopped rolling. The headlines faded, replaced by fresher scandals, newer tragedies. But something remained, an aftertaste, like the bitterness of cyanide itself. It wasn't just the crime. It wasn't just the cold execution. It was the mystery that refused to die. Why did Nadya Prasetya kill Ayla Ramadhani? Some pointed to jealousy. Ayla, after all, had everything Nadya didn't: a supportive family, a new husband, a clear future. She had moved on. She was happy. And happiness, in the mind of someone spiraling into darkness, can feel like betrayal. Others whispered of romantic obsession, that perhaps Nadya had once loved Ayla in a way she never confessed, that her love turned to anger when it wasn't returned, that watching Ayla build a life with Reza Mahendra had triggered something deeply buried. Some even suggested the motive was ego, that Nadya, consumed by the slow unraveling of her own life, couldn't bear being forgotten by someone who once meant everything to her. But Nadya never gave a reason. Not during the investigation. Not during the trial. Not after the verdict. When asked by journalists if she regretted anything, she said, "I regret trusting people who turned away when I needed them." That was all. No confession. No apology. No motive. Reza, Ayla's husband, returned to work months later, a thinner, quieter version of himself. He declined interviews. He avoided cameras. But in a rare conversation with a close friend, he reportedly said, "I think she hated seeing someone else win. Not just Ayla, anyone. She couldn't stand the idea that life went on without her." Tari, meanwhile, struggled with survivor's guilt. She played that day over and over in her mind. Ayla sipping the coffee, Nadya watching silently, the way her own chair had shielded her from the same fate. She kept wondering, what if she had noticed something earlier? What if she had refused the drinks? She didn't return to Olivier Café again. The café itself was remodeled the following year. Table 54 was removed. The corner redesigned. But some staff never forgot. One barista who had worked that shift later said, "She wasn't a monster in the way you expect. She was polite. Tidy. That's what scared me most. She looked like a woman who had already accepted what was going to happen." Inside prison, Nadya adapted quickly. She was placed in a high-security women's facility outside Jakarta. She kept to herself, read voraciously, and participated in art therapy. Her paintings, quiet, surreal depictions of distorted faces and isolated figures, began to draw attention. One even won a local prison art award. Still, she never spoke of Ayla. Never painted her face. Never said her name. And yet, her image endured. Her smile in the courtroom, still circulating online. The surveillance footage, blurred but unmistakable. The icy calmness in her posture as her friend died feet away. To some, she became a modern myth. The woman who poisoned with a smile. To others, she was a chilling reminder of how well rage could be hidden behind charm. Years later, in a university psychology class, her case was studied as part of a module on female killers. The professor asked, "Why do we fixate on Nadya Prasetya? Is it because of the crime, or because she never let us understand it?" There was silence in the room. A student raised her hand. "Because she reminded us that anyone can become invisible until it's too late." The coffee, Vietnamese iced coffee, became a strange symbol after the case. Its popularity surged, then plummeted. In Jakarta, some cafés stopped serving it altogether. In others, people would jokingly ask, "Are you sure this one's safe?" But no one ever drank it again without remembering. One sip. One moment. One quiet death in a crowded room. Ayla Ramadhani's family established a scholarship in her name, supporting Indonesian women in the field of design. Every year, recipients are reminded not just of Ayla's talent, but her kindness, her trust, her belief that even broken people deserve a second chance. That belief cost her everything. Nadya remains in prison. As of today, she has served nearly a decade of her 20-year sentence. She has filed no appeals. She receives few visitors. Some say she has found peace. Others say she's only waiting. But the truth, the full truth, died the moment Ayla did. Because the real motive, the real why, was something Nadya never said, and maybe never even fully knew herself.